So I was kind of like developing into a punk rock viola player. And I moved to New York and we got into the scene. I lived on the Lower East Side. It was 1979. So I was studying music, art up there, but playing music in the village with my friends. I met people, punk bands and stuff, and we started to do this. And sometimes it was more about the attitude and the not being normal, like oh, I'm not normal. I play this and I play it through a big Fender amp and all that stuff. And so I did that and I picked up a couple of cheap guitars, Electros, and I play with them and outfit them, change the pickups and stuff and started to learn about that stuff. And I worked in art galleries. I worked in art restoration, specifically of African and oceanic art, so like primitive art. And I was doing this primitive music. Um, and there was some sense of kind of legitimacy to it at that time because so many beboppers and like legitimate players were doing workshops and walking down the street. I met Don Cherry and he came in and gigged with me and a couple of friends playing some crazy music. I had balafon from the African percussion from the gallery I worked in.
I
Bought this
saw a
big
photo
ball.
of you carrying it on your back through
That's
the
it.
street.
Yeah. And
And
so
someone sat on it
yeah, somebody
at a
sat on it at
wedding.
the wedding. Yeah, she thought
That's
it was
all.
a couch or something.
Yeah.
Set. Okay. Yeah. So I got to play that with Gary Burton and Don Cherry, and so like legitimate kind of jazz people were playing. I was really influenced again by Ornette Coleman and all that stuff. I didn't have chops. I didn't really have chops like these people, but some of them were right there to meet and to hang out with. Um, so I got very interested in that. And then with my friends, we would co-compose strange music and play at CBGBs and Mug Club and all the dives. There was a place called the Living Room on 10th Street, which was actually a living room, and that's where Don came in and blew his pocket trumpet with us. I watch instruments anyway. I'm totally tuned in as a luthier, like to the sound and quality and what I'm seeing. But I always go like, oh, I didn't know that was a left-handed bass player in that band. And then I'll look to see how his strings are. Or somebody posts a picture, I always blow up the picture and go like, oh yeah. I have always favored my left hand. It's my dominant hand. My right hand is always for holding what it is I'm carving or this is the hand that I butter the bread with. And it's always been that way. I was a Catholic school child and have the typical story where the nuns tried to make me write with my right hand. And I just refused. I just would not break, So I stayed left-handed, dragged my hand through the ink. But things that people taught me, my brother and my father and various relatives are all very sports oriented. They taught me to play billiards, to throw a ball, play tennis, things that I was taught to do. I was taught to do right-handed. That's how I approached those specific tasks. Other tasks that I've decided to do are something like scissors. I make tools for scientific research, and I make nylon capture and release snares for birds and bats. I've been doing it for 30 years. And I love Fiskars. I love really good scissors. And luckily, Fiskars is one brand that eventually came out with left-handed scissors. There's a bevel to where your thumb goes into the scissor. And the right-handed scissors were always like really painful.
Hmm.
So in everyday life, I use left-handed scissors. I do most tasks left-handed, but I find like other left-handed people, I think left-handed people are given more toward ambidextrosity just because of things that are right-handed. So I really became a left-handed regular bass player, like
Yeah.
playing not backwards. But because I do luthier work and I rebuild them and I work on these things, I'm always playing an upside down one also. I'm always fixing somebody's banjo or ukulele or something. It was maybe 16, 17 years old, sitting on a friend's bed. You know those moments in life that you just really remember that moment? I remember that moment so clearly. I remember the lighting, the room, him, the music, everything. And I remember that suddenly I found myself alone. So it was a lone solo moment. And I picked the thing up and I just kind of went ring, ring and hit it open and I liked it. And then when he came back and I said, "Can you teach me?" I felt a little bit like a nudge, like I'm bothering this guy. So I don't know how to show you because you're holding it wrong. And I didn't like holding it the other way. So I said, "Well, show me anyway." So he said, "Well, I think for you probably want to put these two fingers here." His older brother was a guitarist. And I'm sure his older brother said, "No, you play it like this." So when he saw me do that, he said, "No, you play it like this." And then I went like, I don't like that. I'm not feeling that. So I went and I bought a Telecaster, a beautiful left-handed blue sparkle Telecaster. But the first thing I did when I took it home was reverse the string because that's the only way I knew to play, and that's the way I assumed I'd play. I always understand Sting and Robert Fripp, people who are left-handed, who someone said, "No, you play it like this," and they did. They both play right-handed, but they're left-handed people. And I always understand that as a left-handed person. You go to school and the desks are for right-handed people.
Yeah.
You know, you get everything of the world, you know, you notice what's canted for right-handed people. And then you adjust, you know, you modify your behavior to fit the tool.
Jeff said that he would teach you, but that you had to string it as a left-hander. If you hadn't had that experience learning it directly from him and him making that gentle recommendation, do you think that you would have gravitated towards playing double bass back to front?
Yes, I probably would have done that. Thinking back, I find it would have been a more difficult path for me. Like I get the logic of the way the strings fall into your hand, like this, like would be an octave on the left-handed instrument, but on this instrument it's like this. And this is short scale, so this is the most forgiving it can possibly be. But I find that on the double bass, because of how big the scale is, instead of laying my hand like this to accomplish, you know, a root, a fifth, an octave, you know, and even could get another fourth above that, maybe, or fifth if I moved like that. Compared to doing it this way, so this would be the root, this would be the fifth, this would be the octave, and this would be that other octave, but they'd be stretched out, you know, like that. Like to play this octave, I have to go like that rather than like that, which it relaxes. Now it can be done. I mean, I can feel it right here. I know that this can be compensated for. This can be exercised to stretch more. And the muscle memory, if there's a lot of things we do on the guitar, like here's a lefty, you know, like this thing, this octave thing, you can do the double bass upside down. You know, so with muscle memory and exercise, when I set them up for people, I check all the octaves, I check, you know, the action at various points, and I can reach every note, of course, you know, it's right there on the board. But I have to go a little backwards all to get up there. So I know that if that was my routine, I would eventually get that muscle memory. I just compensate on guitar. Like here's an upside down guitar, like I'm doing a chord, and I might just do the next chord just like that, not like, you know, not complex, not like that. When I could really play, that would start happening. Yeah, when I could really get through a set of kind of original music and stuff. yeah, they'd think that was unusual and unique. And I had a Burns guitar. It's the heaviest piece of sycamore you could ever hold in your life, right? I got mugged on stage. It just was crazy. It was a tiny little stage. It was real shallow. And some guy was like, man, that was cool. You're lucky you had that Burns. Those things are heavy. I said, yeah, it is. I said, what's with the strings? Like he hadn't noticed. There's this whole fracas going on. And the thing this guy took note of was like, your guitar's backwards, man. People will come up and say, like, wow, I can't believe you do that upside down. You know, it's unbelievable. And I might, I might be sheepish and say, well, I don't do my most complicated stuff that way, because I'm just not in practice with it. If a right-handed upright was the only bass I had, then I would be better at it. It's not something I'm in practice, but they're around. I work on them for people. Well, in playing the octaves and playing upside down, the reaches are different.
Yeah.
But one advantage with the guitar especially is what Dick Dale did, which was to hammer down on the bottom string, because he played upside down left-handed. The things that go like, the surf music, he could do them upside down, would be like, see what I mean? Like,
yeah. And what exactly about that is advantageous, do you think?
He liked to say that his music was meant to sound like the sound of his pet lions. He would surf, and then he'd come out of the water and wrestle with his lions, and they would roar like the surf. And so he thought that doing that was a lot more powerful to him, because the weight, of the weight goes down.
Yeah.
Well, most people would play a Dick Dale song, they'd be like, they wouldn't go, hear the difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm doing it upside down because this is the left-handed guitar.
Yeah.
But most people playing properly with the strings from the right direction strum down for power chords,
Yeah.
Like the Who. But if you go like, and do them backwards, it centers more on those two bottom notes,
Yeah.
So there's a tricky kind of funny advantage to that, which Dick Dale exploited, and which some of the blues players who weren't trained, I think Freddie King and Otis Rush and different blues players that play upside down, have that same quality. They have a relationship with the bass note that's different than when the bass note's up here and you're hammering against the higher strings. Instead, you're hammering down against the bass strings.
Yeah.
And well, I can hear that. I'm aware of it. A lot of people say, I never knew that guy played upside down. But there are people.
But you detect it when you listen.
Yeah, because it's how I grew up. This is a big bass. So I love to play rootsy 20s jazz and blues and stuff on that. And I can almost forget that it's upside down, like I can really get lost on it. These other ones, I can be more tactile, more fluent is the word. Because for one thing, the knobs are okay. They're not in my way. Because a lot of times I'll turn stuff upside down and the knobs are right where my hand is. Some instruments, they're right there. And you inadvertently change them. And there was a band called Swans. They were like Sonic Youth Jr. at the time. So I auditioned for them and I played with them very briefly. And I had a Court headless bass and it was upside down. And they were of this very austere, they played with a pick. You play with a pick and every note is a down stroke. You don't go, you don't go. So they told me, no, you have to play, since we all play downstrokes, let's say you're doing a bass chord. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted, since I had a right-handed bass upside down, they wanted to hear. And I said, I can't do this all night, man. I can't.
They wanted to hear all upstrokes.
Yeah, for me, for you and me, it would be all upstrokes.
Right.
Like, I can do this all night, right? Downstrokes, that's what they were doing. But they wanted me to do that. It was like tedious. That's apropos to what I'm speaking of. Because I didn't have to challenge myself in the same way. I didn't expect myself to go there. There's a bass player named Jimmy Haslett. Jim is like really nice, really kind, and one of the greatest bass players in his realm, in the jazz fusion. And he plays upside down, but he does it with like 6 or 7 strings. So I was able to say, when I learned about him, the heat was off me. I would never, ever be as good as that guy, left-handed or right-handed, like nothing. Like my playing upside down wasn't holding me back from playing like him. Or somebody says, oh, Jimi Hendrix, oh, he played upside down strings. I said, hey, yeah, very early, but by the time he was on the scene or his early gigs that are on film, his strings are reversed. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like, I blew up the picture.
Yeah.
So there's an obsession there with left-handedness. And being in the house the other night and explaining to 6 people that I was going to do this interview, we came into left-handedness, and it turned out 3 of them were left-handed and dyslexic. There could also be a connection to something like dyslexia, something like creative, intuitive behavior, like a behavior that is modified through the uniqueness of the individual. That left-handed people have to be creative, and so there's, because they have to figure out how to work right-handed things. But whether or not there's veracity to that, and whether or not statistically, I don't know how big the stats could be to prove that there's a connection between left-handedness and creativity, and dyslexia and creativity, and left-handedness and dyslexia. I wonder about that, because the way that I've approached this stuff with stringed instruments and carving and African art. In the African art, they said, well, Africa, left-handedness is looked down upon very deeply in the Middle East and in North Africa, and in like places where the communal thing with like, you reach for the food with your right hand, and, everybody's eating out of the same pot. Be left-handed. When I was carving and learning to restore these very, very valuable ancient antique African pieces, they said, well, you're left-handed. I don't know how that's going to work out. So I was always conscious of like backing my nicks up, in the other direction. like I carve this thing to fit the restoration, and then like wipe out like my actual scores,
Wow.
So that they would come from the other direction. Like I got conscious of that. We have to be creative. We have to be adapt to the right-handed world. And I think I mentioned that my son picked up the left-handed guitar upside down, right-handed.
No, I don't think we spoke about that.
Yeah, he can play it with no problem. And there are a couple of other people that I can recommend to you. And one is a filmmaker, Skid Sizik, and he's really curious because he plays a left-handed upside down ukulele. He plays left-handed on a right-handed instrument, but he's actually a right-handed person. So we had a duet called the Lefties, and we were both left-handed ukulele players, but his was upside down. Turned out he's right-handed. My friend Greg Whipp in Annapolis, who I did tell you, plays really well. He plays commercial music the way it should sound. So he's very disciplined and learns properly and plays and sings all these songs, Tony Bennett kind of thing, and Willie Nelson and all this stuff. There's a picture of Jimi Hendrix jamming with Mike Nesmith, and he's playing Mike's right-handed Gretsch. They said that he was fully capable of playing upside down. He did start that way, reputedly. His dad taught him to play on a rubber bandbox and said, well, here's what you do. And then his first guitar was right-handed. That's always debatable with Jimmy. With people saying like, oh, he changed when he went to England. It was from before he went to England. His Air Force, when he's in his Air Force uniform, his strings were left-handed. He changed sometime before that. What I usually use is backwards, upside down, well, right hand stuff. It takes a whole paragraph, right? So I love Idiodextrous. And I hope that it would become popular in the vernacular because it's easier to say, it's easier to conceptualize rather than telling the whole story of it. But if people knew if they had a word for it, it would be much easier to just say that. How do you play? Well, I play left-handed upside down. Well, I'm left-handed, but I play idiodextrous. Oh, instead of like, well, it's backwards. The strings are like on a right-handed guitar, but I have it upside down. Like that's a lot to explain. So it's really cool that you're coming up with, a way to shortcut that and make it into a word rather than a sentence, or a few sentences or whatever. So I like that. And I would describe myself that way. And now I would describe this kind of playing that way. But then I would always have to follow it with the sentence because no one knows what idiodextrous is.
So we're back at square one, but we've also added an extra 10 seconds of our lives that we'll never get back.
Except another thing is true, that this is the Google world. So when I Googled the word, like, what does that mean? You came right up.
Great.
So I'm thinking people that want to know, if I say idiodextrous, if I say Google it, they'll see you. It's like, oh, that's that guy Don was talking about. So, yeah. So maybe popularity can be gained more quickly than in previous times for that reason. However it happens, as long as that happens, I think I would hope that it would catch on. I like it. It's nice. Oh, I think it's the personal contact. It's the relationship one can have with not just the sound, but the vibrational, vibrational healing energy. When I was rocking out and punking and showing people I could paint and go to this crazy jazz music, it was sort of about them. It was sort of about like, oh, they're gonna like it, oh, I'm gonna play this guitar. They're gonna like it. It's gonna be cool. My band members will like it, and we're jamming, and the guys like me. I'm doing good. But I would pay lip service to the times when I sat next to my son's crib with a baritone ukulele and strummed lullabies. But I just thought that was like I was taking a break from music. And I was just gonna, I've got this little son. We're in Ithaca, New York, Cornell University in the middle of nowhere. I'm not gigging. I was doing gigs in New York. I was driving over the mountains in my 65 Rambler, and the alternator lights starting to glow. And I'm like, oh my God. And I've got this little son, 6 months old, and this wife in Ithaca. And I'm coming back from New York with $75 in my pocket, like thinking I kind of risking my life here. And I realized like I gotta not gig. I gotta just let that go for a while and just do my house husband and get back to basics. And I just kind of said, I'll keep my baritone uke. And I just had a baritone uke, played upside down. which now belongs to Greg Hawkes of the Cars. I played the uke upside down over the crib and just kind of got that vibration. And when I think back, that's like one of the best musical experiences I've had. And now it's more like when I'm sitting in the middle of the night and playing one of these instruments on my lap, or when I pick up my double bass like I'm about to go to bed and my double bass is in the corner, and I'll just relate to it. And it makes me think of an axiom that I read once, that life is not about uh, molecules, it's about vibration. It's about the vibration between the molecules. And there's something about music that's very ethereal in that regard to me. And I relate to music as molecules in that sense. You know, I relate to it as the combination of this instrument and this string and these frets and these people and these amps and this experience. But it's that late at night, that relating to just the sound itself and feeling it coming off the floor, feeling it coming off the wall. And I just pull it out a little bit, come back about a foot, and just start riffing. And in that way, I relate to it in a way that's kind of timeless. You know, I mean, I've been dead, you know, I've been dead, I've been near death, I've been radiated and chemoed and Percocetted to death, and died on the table, came close to it at other times. And like the purest thing that happened to me was when they lost me on the table. You know, that was like the most real moment of my life, was I was feet first up in the air, float, just like a comic, you know, down the hall I went. And I said, this is really, really nice. I could do this. I can really. And then I was called back, you know, and it was like, boom, boom. And I'm like being woken, and all this stuff's going on. And so sometimes I feel like I'm in that moment. And that moment felt timeless. That moment felt, I can do this. And so when I pick up the bass and I get going, that happens. You know, like the instrument fades away, the troubles of the day fade away, I got to get up early and get that thing done go away. And it's just me and that sound. And I feel at that time, I'm not just a technician that's figured out how to do this thing. It's almost like I'm really, really happy that I get to be a cog in this formula that's helping this thing get out of the instrument. You know, that I can. I'm just a part of I'm a vehicle. You know, and when that happens to me, it's better for me. It's better for my ego. It's better for my soul. It's better for everything that just happens. And those are things I've known about. You know, and I played with various great people, and they're real soulful. And they say it's about the vibration, man. It's about feeling it, you know. So, and I've always known that, and I can always say that, but I don't always feel that. And so when I do feel that, I know like I'm in the right place. I know that this has been a great journey, and that it's timeless. Just like when they lost me on the table, it's like there was no time there. You know, it wasn't about time at all. And it wasn't really about space either. It was about something different, which is kind of in between, intangible. And that's kind of the thing that I don't really look for, but I love when it happens.